My beloved child, stop scrolling and remain here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you at this exact point in your journey. Something has shifted in the heart of your soulmate, and the words they have been holding back are rising so strongly that they can no longer pretend everything is normal. They have rehearsed one sentence again and again in the silence. I never thought I would have to say this to you. But what follows that sentence is not what you expect. It is deeper than an apology, more powerful than a confession, and far more significant than anything they have ever admitted before. Do not turn away now. Something extraordinary is waiting for you near the end of this message, and every word leading to it carries a piece of the truth. You may have felt an unfamiliar heaviness around your heart recently. Perhaps you woke up thinking about them without knowing why. Perhaps an old memory appeared suddenly, or their name crossed your mind during a quiet moment. You tried to dismiss it as coincidence, but your spirit knew something was moving beneath the surface. Heaven has been allowing you to sense what your eyes could not yet see. Your soulmate has reached an emotional turning point. They are no longer standing where they stood before. Something they discovered, something they remembered, and something they finally understood about you has changed the way they see your connection. For a long time, they believed silence would protect them. They thought that if they kept their feelings hidden, they could remain in control. They convinced themselves that time would weaken the bond, that distance would soften the memories, and that the questions in their heart would eventually disappear. Yet the opposite happened. Every attempt to forget you made your presence stronger. Every distraction brought them back to the same truth. Every quiet night became a mirror in which they saw the feelings they had refused to name. Now they are standing before a truth that can no longer be avoided. Stay until the end, because the most important part of their confession is not the sentence they are preparing to say. It is the reason they waited so long to say it. That reason has been hidden behind pride, uncertainty, and an old wound they rarely speak about. They were not simply afraid of rejection. Their fear went deeper. They were afraid that loving you would require them to become honest about who they had been, what they had done, and what they had allowed fear to steal from them. Your soulmate has spent more time thinking about you than they would ever admit publicly. They remember details you assumed they had forgotten. The tone of your voice during a certain conversation. The way you became quiet when something hurt you. The kindness you offered even when you were carrying your own burdens. The moment you looked at them as though you could see beyond every wall they had built. That moment remained inside them. They tried to bury it, but it became the memory that returned whenever they questioned whether your connection had been real. And now, something has happened that forced them to look at that memory differently. Someone may have spoken about you. A situation may have revealed your true character. A truth they misunderstood may have finally become clear. Whatever the outer event was, the deeper revelation was spiritual. They realized that you were never asking them to be perfect. You were asking them to be present. You were not demanding that they have every answer. You were waiting for honesty. You were not trying to control their life. You were offering them a kind of love that made truth feel possible. That realization broke something open inside them. Pause here and listen carefully. They are not only thinking about what they want to say. They are thinking about what their silence may have cost you. They are remembering the times you needed clarity and received confusion. They are remembering the moments when your heart reached toward them, but they answered with distance. They are seeing how their mixed signals may have caused you to question your own worth. And for the first time, they understand that their fear did not remain inside them. It touched you. It left unanswered questions in your heart. This is why their sentence carries so much weight. I never thought I would have to say this to you. They never thought they would have to admit that they were wrong about you. They never thought they would have to confess that the person they were running from was the person their heart kept returning to. They never thought they would have to acknowledge that what they called confusion was often fear wearing a different name. They never thought they would have to stand before you emotionally uncovered, without excuses, without rehearsed defenses, and without pretending they felt less than they truly did. But the time for pretending is ending. You have changed during this season. You may not notice the full transformation because you lived through every difficult step, but heaven has seen it. You stopped begging for what required mutual effort. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's uncertainty. You began learning that love should not require you to abandon your peace. Even on the days when you missed them, something within you became stronger. You started returning to yourself. Your soulmate sensed that shift. They noticed when your energy changed, even if there was no direct conversation. They felt the moment you stopped chasing answers. They felt the emotional distance that appeared when you finally chose to protect your heart. At first, they misunderstood it. They thought perhaps you no longer cared. They told themselves that moving on would be easier if they believed you had already done the same. But deep within, they knew this was not indifference. It was dignity. It was the quiet strength of someone who had loved deeply but could no longer remain suspended in uncertainty. And this realization unsettled them. Do not skip what comes next, because there is something they have not admitted even to themselves until now. They once believed you would always remain emotionally available to them, no matter how long they waited. Not because they wanted to take advantage of your heart, but because your love felt so steady that they mistook it for permanence without responsibility. They believed the door would remain open. They believed there would always be another opportunity, another conversation, another moment to explain. Then something changed. They imagined a future in which you were no longer waiting. They saw you smiling without them. They pictured someone else appreciating the qualities they had overlooked. They imagined another person receiving the honesty, tenderness, loyalty, and patience that they had been too afraid to embrace. And suddenly, the possibility of losing you stopped being an abstract fear. It became real. That is when the sentence first formed inside them. I never thought I would have to say this to you. They never thought they would have to ask whether it was too late. They never thought they would have to wonder whether your heart had finally closed the door they kept refusing to walk through. They never thought they would be the one searching for words while you stood in silence. They never imagined that one day, you might become the uncertain one, not because you stopped loving, but because you finally learned to value your peace more than promises without action. This is the point where their pride began to weaken. Your soulmate is being shown the difference between missing you and being ready for you. Missing you is emotional. Readiness requires transformation. Missing you can happen in silence. Readiness demands courage. Missing you can remain a private ache. Readiness must become visible through honesty, consistency, and action. Heaven is not allowing them to confuse these things anymore. They are being asked difficult questions in the private chambers of their heart. Are they willing to speak without hiding behind vague words? Are they willing to acknowledge the ways they withdrew? Are they willing to listen to your truth without becoming defensive? Are they prepared to rebuild trust slowly rather than expecting immediate forgiveness? Are they ready to love you in a way that brings peace rather than constant uncertainty? Their answer is still forming, but something significant has already happened. They are no longer running from the questions. You may wonder why this message is reaching you now. It is because you are approaching a moment when emotional clarity will matter more than emotional intensity. You have felt enough powerful emotions to know that strong feelings alone do not create a stable connection. Love must become honest. Love must become responsible. Love must learn how to stay present when the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Your soulmate is beginning to understand this. For so long, they believed the greatest risk was telling you how they felt. Now they see that the greater risk was never telling you at all. They see how silence allowed misunderstandings to grow. They see how assumptions replaced conversations. They see how fear created distance where honesty could have created healing. And there is one particular misunderstanding they desperately want to correct. Stay with this message. Something huge is waiting beyond this revelation. There was a moment when you believed their distance meant you were not enough. You may have questioned your appearance, your personality, your timing, or your value. You searched your memories, trying to identify what you had done wrong. You replayed conversations and examined your words. You wondered whether you had cared too deeply, spoken too honestly, or hoped too much. But their distance was not proof that you lacked value. Their distance was evidence of a battle within them. You awakened something they were not prepared to face. Your presence made them imagine a kind of connection that required emotional maturity. You made them feel seen, and being seen was both beautiful and frightening. They could not hide behind a surface version of themselves around you. You noticed the pauses between their words. You recognized when their smile was covering uncertainty. You sensed when they wanted to move closer but became afraid. They did not know how to receive that level of understanding. So they stepped back. But distance did not erase what you awakened. It magnified it. Now, when they say, "I never thought I would have to say this to you," part of what they mean is this: I never thought I would have to admit that I pushed away the person who understood me most. The words frighten them because they carry responsibility. Once spoken, they cannot return to pretending. Once they acknowledge the truth, they must decide what to do with it. They know that you are no longer satisfied by beautiful words without a change in behavior. They know that you have grown. They know that the version of you who once waited quietly may now require clarity. And you should. Your heart is not a waiting room for someone else's indecision. Your love is not something another person should receive only when loneliness makes them remember its value. You are worthy of a connection that does not leave you constantly decoding silence. You are worthy of a love that speaks, listens, grows, and shows up. This message is not asking you to abandon your wisdom. It is preparing you to hear the truth without losing yourself inside it. Because when their confession comes, it may touch the exact place in your heart that once longed to hear those words. The old version of you may want to respond immediately. The memories may rise. The tenderness may return. But heaven is teaching you to pause. Not to punish them. Not to play games. Not to become cold. But to observe whether their words carry the weight of genuine transformation. There is a difference between someone feeling emotional in a moment and someone becoming emotionally available. You will recognize the difference through consistency. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that they cannot simply return with a dramatic confession and expect every wound to disappear. They must be willing to hear how their silence affected you. They must be willing to answer questions honestly. They must accept that trust may need time. They must prove through steady action that they are no longer governed by the same fear. This realization is humbling them. They have imagined speaking to you many times. In some versions, they begin with an apology. In others, they try to act calm, hoping you will not notice how nervous they are. Sometimes they imagine you smiling with relief. Other times they imagine you looking at them with a quietness they cannot read. That quietness frightens them most, because it reminds them that they no longer know exactly where they stand in your heart. Yet one sentence remains unchanged in every imagined conversation. I never thought I would have to say this to you. What follows changes each time, because they are still gathering the courage to reveal the deepest truth. Sometimes the next words are, I was wrong. Sometimes they are, I never stopped caring. Sometimes they are, I thought I had more time. Sometimes they whisper, I am afraid I lost you. But there is another sentence, one they have barely allowed themselves to think, that carries even more power than all the others. That sentence is connected to a choice they made when no one was watching. Something happened recently that placed them at an emotional crossroads. They were given an opportunity to continue living as though your connection did not matter. They could have chosen the easier path. They could have accepted the version of events that protected their pride. They could have let others influence how they saw you. They could have remained silent. But this time, they did something different. They defended the truth of what they felt. Perhaps they did not speak your name aloud. Perhaps the moment happened only within their heart. But they stopped agreeing with the lies they had been telling themselves. They stopped calling the connection insignificant. They stopped pretending that you were easily replaced. They admitted that no matter how far they tried to move emotionally, something real remained. This inner admission was the beginning of their return to truth. Do not confuse a spiritual shift with a guaranteed outcome. Every person still has choices to make. But understand this, the emotional atmosphere has changed. What was buried is rising. What was avoided is demanding attention. What was left unsaid is pressing against the silence. And your soulmate is closer than ever to speaking. There is also something you must know about the timing. The delay was not meaningless. During the waiting, you discovered parts of yourself that might have remained hidden if everything had happened quickly. You learned how to survive unanswered questions. You learned that longing does not have to destroy your peace. You learned that you can love someone and still choose boundaries. You learned that your future is not dependent on one person's decision. That growth matters now. Because the conversation approaching you will require the strongest version of your heart, not the most wounded one. Your wounded heart might hear their confession and rush to erase the past. Your healed heart will listen with compassion while still honoring what you experienced. Your wounded heart might accept promises because it fears losing the opportunity. Your healed heart will watch for alignment between words and actions. Your wounded heart might believe that love means immediate access. Your healed heart understands that forgiveness and trust are not always restored at the same speed. This is why you were strengthened before the truth arrived. Your soulmate has also been changing, though their transformation may not be complete. They are beginning to see that vulnerability is not weakness. They are learning that honesty does not guarantee rejection. Sometimes it creates the first real chance for connection. They are discovering that control cannot protect the heart forever. Eventually, control becomes a prison. You were never meant to break down their walls by force. They had to become tired of living behind them. And they are tired now. They are tired of carrying conversations that never happened. They are tired of imagining your response. They are tired of wondering whether you knew how deeply they cared. They are tired of watching time move forward while their truth remains trapped in the past. Still, one fear remains. They fear that when they finally speak, you will say, "Why did it take you so long?" They do not yet know how to answer. The honest answer is complicated. It took them this long because they were learning the cost of avoidance. It took them this long because they had to lose the illusion of control. It took them this long because they confused emotional protection with emotional wisdom. It took them this long because your love exposed a part of them that still needed healing. But they also know that explanations cannot erase consequences. That is why their confession is becoming less polished and more sincere. They are no longer searching for perfect words. They are searching for true ones. Stay till the end of this part, because the final revelation will explain why your spirit has felt restless lately. There is a thread between two hearts when something important remains unresolved. This does not mean you must obsess over every feeling or treat every coincidence as a sign. It means that deep emotional experiences often leave echoes. When one person reaches a moment of truth, the other may sense a change before understanding it logically. Your recent restlessness may not be a command to chase them. It may be an invitation to prepare yourself. Prepare to hear without abandoning discernment. Prepare to feel without losing your center. Prepare to remember that you are allowed to ask questions. Prepare to choose peace, even if the words you once prayed to hear finally arrive. Because something extraordinary is not always the return of a person. Sometimes it is the return of your own power in the presence of that person. You are no longer standing where they left you. This is the truth they are beginning to realize. They remember a version of you who waited, hoped, and searched for meaning in every silence. But the person they may soon encounter has changed. You have become more aware of your worth. You have become less willing to accept emotional confusion as destiny. You have learned that a sacred connection should not require endless suffering to prove its importance. This does not make you unloving. It makes you ready for healthier love. Your soulmate senses that they cannot approach you carelessly. They cannot offer half-truths. They cannot speak only enough to keep the door open. They know that this conversation will ask them to be clearer than they have ever been. And that is why they keep repeating, "I never thought I would have to say this to you." They never thought they would have to reveal how deeply your absence affected them. They never thought they would have to admit that they compared every new connection to the peace they once felt with you. They never thought they would have to confess that the moments they acted indifferent were often the moments they felt the most. They never thought they would have to tell you that your silence became louder than every distraction around them. But there is more. Behind all these admissions is a truth connected to one specific night, one private realization, and one decision they made afterward. That decision could change the direction of everything between you. They have not told anyone the full story. They have protected it because once revealed, it will expose how serious their feelings have become. On that night, they found themselves holding something connected to you. A message, a memory, a photograph, or perhaps an object that carried the energy of a shared moment. They did not plan to become emotional. They did not expect the past to feel so present. But as they looked at it, a realization moved through them with undeniable clarity. They understood that the connection they had been trying to escape was not asking to be erased. It was asking to be understood. They saw your face in their mind. They remembered what they never answered. They remembered the final moment when they could have spoken but chose silence instead. And then they whispered words they had never said aloud before. Those words were not only an apology. They were a promise. A promise that if they were given one honest opportunity to speak with you, they would not hide behind fear again. A promise that they would tell you what truly happened. A promise that they would reveal why they pulled away, what they felt during the silence, and what they discovered when they tried to imagine a life in which you never returned. But before they can keep that promise, there is one final truth they must face. It is the truth they fear could change the way you see them forever. It is the real reason they believe they may have waited too long. And it is the secret hidden behind the words they are preparing to say next. I never thought I would have to say this to you, but the person who kept us apart was not who you believed it was.